guys, Rose here. Sorry it's been a little bit longer than I planned for my next video, but I've been out of action with a shoulder injury, unfortunately. It's feeling a bit better now, still not back 100%, but good enough to kind of move around and do things. So today I'm doing my 3 ways video, and we are doing 3 ways with embossing powders. I love embossing with embossing powders. I think it's magical every single time I do it. I just love watching the powder turn molten and just smooth out. Oh, it's just magic. So, three ways to use embossing powders in your journals. Now, there are a lot of ways and a lot of techniques that I love, but we're doing 3 ways, so let's get doing my 3. Are they my favourite ways or my most used ways or both? Whatever. They're three ways that I love. Okay? So, first of all, we are going to make a little embellishment. I have here just a plain die cut. Do I have... I don't have the die handy to show you. It's just a die cut of a little kind of tag, a round tag label type thing. Okay, and I'm going to make this into a kind of more of an embellishment than what it is. Now, one tip I'm going to give it is you don't need all of the colours. I have very few actual embossing powders. I'm going to show you them all because I have so few. I can. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pots, 2 of these little bottles, and a tub of just clear embossing powder. Okay, this one isn't even really truly an embossing powder. It's kind of the glue embossing powder. It's a sticky, the Ranger sticky embossing powder. You kind of heat it up, it turns into glue, and then you stick your stuff onto it. I use that for foiling quite a bit, and it gives a nice grungy look, distressed look. I have 2 black ones, so essentially that's just one as well, really. One of those isn't even opened. I can't even remember why I ordered 2. I know I ordered the 2 of them at the same time, but there you go. I think because I had read so many different reports on black embossing powders that I wanted to be sure I got a decent one. But the first one I opened seemed to be pretty good, so I haven't opened the second one yet. Then I have a gold sparkle embossing powder, a silver sparkle embossing powder, and a clear sparkle embossing powder. Okay, these are all very pretty, but I don't use glitter very much in my journals. Sometimes. And then there's these 2, a purple and a gold. Love the 2 of these actual embossing powders. I cannot for the life of me remember where I got them. They are, well, no, I know I got them on Amazon. I don't know what shop, I don't know what brand. There's no labels on them. But I only got the 2, and I'm very sorry I only got the 2 because the gold one out of this, I just love it. The purple one I like. I don't use it very much. I'm sure that if I ever get around to doing a purple journal, I will use it, because purple is one of my favourite colours, which is why I got the purple. But the gold one is the one I use 99% of the time, 99.99999% of the time even, the gold or the clear. Okay, and you'll see what I use the clear for in a minute. Again, lots of different applications for the clear one, but because I have so few embossing powders doesn't mean that I'm limited to just those colours, because you can use your inks to, like, first of all you can use them to stamp your image, and then stamp your image with Versamark and go over that with your embossing powder, your clear embossing powder. That gives you any colour stamped image you want. Today what I'm doing with it, I'm colouring my card, simply just because this is one of the colours that I'm using in my newest journals. well, it's not one of the colours that it's kind of in the range of those colours. It's actually quite dark when you put it on like that. Didn't expect it to be that dark, but no matter. So I'm just colouring my card. So if you have already coloured card that, you know, you don't need to colour, fair enough. Just start at this point. Next thing I'm going to do is get my Versamark. Again, there are lots of different kind of inks that you can use for this. You can actually use Vaseline as well, or glue, or anything that will help stick the powder to your card. You can actually even use water. It takes a lot longer to dry it, but you can use water as well, and you can get some really nice effects with water. So I'm just going to cover the whole thing with my Versamark. Now I will probably speed up this bit of the video because there's going to be a lot of covering and heating and covering and heating. What I'm doing is I'm giving it at least 3 coats of my clear embossing powder. Okay. And as I'm going, when I've one done, I'm going to move my tweezers to a different spot so that I won't have an indent in just one spot. It'll melt in, when I move it and reheat it, it'll melt in and it'll all be lovely and smooth. Okay, so from here on I'm going to speed the video up until I have these layers on, okay? Okay, so we have our 3 layers of embossing powder on there and melted in. And I'm just going to take a sheet of, just a scrap sheet of paper. I'm just going to lay that on. And I have a little stamp here. I have a, let's see if I can get it there, a little bee stamp. And I'm going to ink this up with some StazOn, black StazOn ink. And that'll stay, that won't actually stay wet for very long, so I'm going to have to move quickly. Hopefully I'll be able to move quickly enough to get this done. Make sure I keep that out of the way of my heat tool. Now I'm going to reheat this this embossing powder that's on here until it's liquid, and then I'm going to press my stamp into it while it is still liquid. Make sure it's good and hot and get your stamp down there, and you need to work fairly quickly. I think I went a little off center there with that, but I don't really mind that. At the end of the day, I am doing a vintage journal, as always. This may not be the technique for you if you're fussy about getting things perfectly centered, you know. But there we go. And we end up with a little kind of medallion. Can you see? With the imprinted and aged looking imprint on it, stamped into it. Okay, now that looks really, really good with metallic embossing powder as well. In fact, the first time I ever did it was with metallic embossing powder, and it was just awesome. So it stays on, and it really doesn't affect your stamps, just in case you're worried about that. What you're seeing on my stamp is just stays on. Now I did one of these earlier as well. I just think that's awesome. I did one earlier and I used 2 different embossing powders, as you can see there. So what I did with this one, this was actually a bit of a kind of a happy accident. I had done my 3 layers and I stamped my stamp into it with no ink on it, just the stamp itself, and it was pretty, but it didn't really stand out. So I went over with a Versamark pen, which is this one here. It's an emboss pen. Is it Versamark? don't think it's actually Versamark. Sukaneko Versamark, yeah. Let me see. No, it's Sukaneko embossing ink. It just says emboss. But you can get these from like Ranger and lots of different kind of people do them now. They're just embossing pens. And I just went in around my stamp with this. And I'll just show you the nib. It just looks like a marker. And it gives out clear embossing ink. Now you can do this with Vaseline, with a paintbrush Vaseline. You can do it with glycerin is another one. Anything that will make your embossing powder stick will work. So anyway, I went in around the stamp with this and I put some gold embossing powder in. I brushed away the excess around the edges and all that, and I reheated it, thinking that oh, to give a lovely inlay. Never having seen it done before, obviously. There's a reason people don't do it apparently, because it kind of smooths out the stamped image and it kind of gives a very soft edge around it because it all kind of starts to move into each other. So what I did was I reheated the whole thing again. It had the lovely kind of butterfly shape in the gold and the green outside around it. I reheated the whole thing and stamped my butterfly image back into that gold butterfly shape, and it came out quite pretty. I really like that. So that's how to do that one if you were interested. This one is the one I just showed you with the black ink, and it gives a very grungy kind of old look. So yeah, I really like that one as well. I will probably go around the edges of this with a black StazOn maybe. I'll see. But yeah, so that's those. You can make your own little embellishments with embossing powder. And it doesn't have to be even coloured embossing powder, because you can use your coloured inks to colour clear embossing powder. Awesome sauce. So that's one little way to use embossing powders in your journal. And on to method number 2. So one of the things that I like to do is to use it to edge my pieces. Usually it is usually something like a portrait or a photograph that I would use it on, but you know, I sometimes use it on things like little journaling cards and things like that as well. So all I do there, I grab my scissors. Where is my scissors? It's here. I'm not going to use my good scissors. I'm going to use a different one. Or a paper distresser, anything to just distress the edges of your paper. You don't have to do this step. I just like how this looks. So you get it quite ruffled up and a few notches and fairly tatty looking. Now I only actually glued this just 5 minutes ago, so it may not be stuck down properly. Oh, it is doing okay. Yeah, so we get it nice and tatty. A torn edge with a torn edge ruler would do nicely here as well, I'd say. But I'm just going to use my time-tested method. This is the way I've done these pieces all the time, so I will continue with this. Oop. Get that corner. Okay, so that's all nice and tatty. And I'm going to get my Versamark or Vaseline or glycerin or whatever you want to use that's sticky that will hold your embossing powder. And I'm just going to take that piece of paper off for a sec. I'm just going to on the very edge, just where that paper is ruffled, almost the very same as you would if you were distressing, you know. So we're just getting the very edge here. Doesn't matter if you get it on the back, that's fine. But you want it all the ways around there. Now I'm going to edge this in gold. Where did I put my gold? Oh, there it is. Just going to lay out a line of this. And I'm going to just dip my edges into it. Now you can go as thin or as thick as you want with these edges. You can bring the ink in further if you want more. Or you can just keep it to the edge like I'm doing. Yeah, I'm just going to put this over here out of the way for the time being. Let's hope I don't knock it with my elbow. Now, because it's a nice big piece, I don't need to use a tweezers. So just be careful, don't burn your fingers. And we're going to heat this. So you end up with a lovely gilded edge on your piece. And it's tatty and it's grungy and it's vintagey and it's just awesome. I love how that looks. So I'll often layer this onto a piece of tea-dyed paper or pattern paper, or I might do 2 or 3 layers, and it looks pretty good, cool with the gilded shabby edge. So that's another way that I like to use embossing powders in my journals. Okay, so let's get this back in the bottle before I lose it. Now the last method is more traditional, but it is still one of my favourites, so I had to include it. I'll just get these out of the way so they don't get destroyed. So here I have one of the journals that I'm currently working on. I have the pages all in there and sorted pretty much to where I want them to be. And I'm going to take this page out. And I'm just going to emboss a script stamp on the background of this page. You can do this with your printed papers as well, like your paper packs. And it looks awesome. It's another way to get your kind of background interest going. But it looks really, really cool. So, going to ink up my stamp with my Versamark. First things first, actually, I completely forgot about this. This is an anti-static pouch. It's just simply to stop any staticky bits happening and stop the powder going where you don't want it to go. Just makes it easier to kind of keep it all neat and tidy. So hopefully I'll have enough on there. I'm going to give that a quick brush over. Oops. I should have a softer brush for this, but I can't find my softer brush, so I'll just use this one just to get rid of any excess powder. Okay, so inking up my stamp. I have threads and everything in here. Doesn't really matter because I don't want a perfect imprint with this. As usual with background stamping, you just want bits and pieces kind of here and there. So my poor stamp is falling apart. That's how much it gets used. So I'm just kind of doing spot stamping all over the page. And I am going to emboss this with the gold powder. You can do this with clear powder as well, and it'll give you a nice tone on tone subtle look. It's something similar to using the Versamark with a stamp just on its own, but it'll be a little bit more pronounced. But I'm going to use the gold this time. Just a sheet of paper. Oh no, that could have been disastrous. Okay, anyway, so I'm going to just pour it over in a big line. I'd probably use the whole bottle here, but obviously it goes back in, so it's no big deal. I'm just going to shimmy it down the page. Try and get all the areas where I have stamped. Tap off the excess. And before I go heating that, I am going to tidy this up. It looks so innocuous and dull and boring on the page like that, but when you heat it up, it's just awesome. I really need one of those little tidy tray things. You know, the little trays that you can pour the stuff back in. That would be awesome. Actually, I meant to say as well, Tim Holtz has a range of embossing powders. They're distress embossing powders, and I would love to try them. But I reckon they'd be awesome for junk journals and vintage journals, you know. Now, sorry about that. That precious stuff. Okay, so we have our page, and let's watch the magic happen. Okay, so now we have magic on the page. I love that. I think it looks awesome. Okay guys, so there you have it. 3 ways to use embossing powders in your journal. As I said, there are so many wonderful, wonderful ways to use these. I just think they're magical. I hope you can tell that I love using them. Maybe I should do 3 more ways to use them in the future. But anyway, hope you enjoyed, hope you got some ideas and some inspiration, and that you enjoy kind of creating with these techniques and these methods. Okay guys, have a great day. Bye!